Hi, in module number 6, my focus is to teach compound and complex sentences. I've noticed that many students have a difficult time turning simple sentences into more compound and complex sentences, and so I want to focus in this lesson on teaching you how to actually develop simple sentences into more compound complex ones. And compound complex sentences gives you more variety in your formal academic writing, and it also gives you a little bit more sophistication in your academic formal writing. So again, my focus in this module is to teach you how to develop or turn simple sentences into more compound complex sentences. Now, before we get into the different types of sentences, I want to first start by introducing you to two types of clauses. Now, the first type of clause is what's called the dependent clause. In the previous module, we did go over very briefly dependent clauses, but this particular module will focus more on that. It begins with a subordinating conjunction or a relative pronoun, and I gave you a list of relative pronouns earlier on in module number 4, so please make reference to that in case you want a refresher on what the relative pronouns are. And also, a dependent clause cannot stand alone because that clause is missing a subject, it's missing a verb, and it does not express a complete thought. And we learned a little bit earlier that we're actually going to learn a little bit later, that a dependent clause is also known as a sentence fragment. And a fragment is not a complete sentence. Again, it is also a dependent clause. It does not have a subject, a verb, and it does not express a complete thought. It's only a piece of a sentence. It has to connect with something else to make it a complete sentence. So I do have a list for you at the bottom of your screen of common subordinating conjunctions that begin with after and end with while. So please just familiarize yourself with this list of subordinating conjunctions. And you know that if your clause begins with one of these words, you know that you have the beginning of a dependent clause. Okay. Now, if you do combine a dependent clause with an independent clause, you do get a complete sentence, but a dependent clause by itself is not going to be a sentence. So you will not have a verb in it of the sentence, and you will not have a subject of the sentence in it. Now, our second type of clause is called an independent clause. It does have a subject, it has a verb, and it does express a complete thought. So an independent clause is an actual sentence. It has 3 parts of a sentence: a subject, a verb, and a complete thought. Okay? Now, an independent clause, unlike dependent clause, can stand alone because it is a complete sentence. And now you can combine, like I stated earlier, a dependent clause with an independent clause and have one complete sentence. But a dependent clause by itself would not be a sentence. However, an independent clause by itself is a complete sentence. So let's look at our 3 different types of complete sentences or independent clauses. The first type of sentence is what's called a simple sentence. In the introduction to this module, you heard me reference simple sentences. Now, a simple sentence consists of only one independent clause. Okay, so again, an independent clause has a subject, it has a verb, and it expresses a complete thought. And you only have one of those independent clauses in a simple sentence. However, in a simple sentence, you can have more than one subject of the sentence, and you can have more than one verb of the sentence, but you just have one independent clause. Let's look at 2 examples I have for you with this particular slide. Let's look at the one on the very top. Martin and Lena are good friends. Again, let's find our verb. Are is our verb of the sentence. Who or what are? Now again, are is just one verb. It's plural, however, but it's just one verb. Who or what are? Martin, Lena are. Martin, Lena We have two subjects for one verb. Even though we have two subjects of this sentence and one verb, it is one complete sentence that it is creating. Martin and Lena are good friends. One independent clause, which means we do have one simple sentence. Now our next example, I have several good friends. Have is our verb. Who or what have? We have to ask that question to figure out what our subject is. I is the subject. I have. Now have is the verb of the sentence, I is the subject, and the entire sentence is one complete thought, which means you have a simple sentence here. One complete thought, one independent clause means you have a simple sentence. Now it gets a little complicated with compound sentences. Simple sentences, obviously, keep it brief, keep it simple. However, when you get to compound sentences, we do have a little bit more confusion, a little bit more problems with students. So let's take a look at our sentence number 2 is compound sentence. It consists of two or more independent clauses joined by one of our coordinating conjunctions. Now remember, an independent clause has a subject, it has a verb, it expresses a complete thought. In a compound sentence, we have two independent clauses. Now these two independent clauses or sentences are joined by a coordinating conjunction. In the previous module, I listed the 7 different coordinating conjunctions, and I'm actually going to I've listed them here for you too in case you have forgotten. It's our fanboys acronym: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. So please try to familiarize yourself with these 7 coordinating conjunctions as soon as you can. Okay. And also, a compound sentence can be created to form 2 or more simple sentences. So you can actually take 2 simple sentences, combine them with one of your coordinating conjunctions, and make a more compound sentence. Let's look at our example, the first example at the top of your screen. Now I have 2 simple sentences that I am going to combine and as one sentence, and I'm going to combine those 2 with one of my coordinating conjunctions that the previous slide showed you. Let's look at our first simple sentence. I can add quickly in my head. Can is my verb there. Who or what can? I can. So I is my subject. I can add quickly. Can add is my verb. Who or what can add? I. I can add quickly in my head is my simple sentence. I have a subject. I have a verb. I have one complete thought. So I have a simple sentence. My second simple sentence is I am very good in math. Am is my verb. Who or what am? I am. So I is my subject. I am very good in math is one complete thought. It has a subject of the sentence, a verb of the sentence. It is simple. Now I want to combine my 2 simple sentences into one using one of my coordinating conjunctions to form a more compound, sophisticated, complete sentence. So I'm going to combine both of them. I can add quickly in my head and I am very good in math. So I use my conjunction and to combine those 2 simple sentences together to form one complete compound sentence. Okay? Let's look at our second example I have on your screen. Again, I have 2 examples of simple sentences that I'm going to combine together as one complete sentence with one of my coordinating conjunctions. He leads a very busy life is my first simple sentence. Leads is my verb. Who or what leads? He leads. So he is my subject of the sentence. He leads a very busy life is one complete sentence, one independent clause that has a subject, he, a verb, leads, one complete thought. The second simple sentence or independent clause is his family always comes first. Let me find my verb. Comes. Who or what comes? Family comes. So family is my subject of the sentence, and I have one complete thought. His family always comes first. So now I want to combine both of my simple sentences into one compound sentence, and I'm going to do that by combining the 2 with one of my conjunctions. He leads a very busy life, but his family always comes first. So but is my conjunction that I'm going to use to combine both of my simple sentences to form a more compound sentence. Now it gets a little bit more tricky. It gets trickier with our third type of sentence, which is our complex sentences. So let's take a look at our definition of a complex sentence. It consists of one independent clause and at least one dependent clause to form a complete sentence. So again, complex is one independent clause and one dependent clause. And remember, a dependent clause begins with one of our subordinating conjunctions that I showed you in a previous slide in this presentation, and it can also begin with a relative pronoun, which is what I showed you in a different module. Let's look at our complicated example here for complex sentences. So I have two simple sentences, and I'm going to actually turn one into a dependent clause and keep the other as an independent clause. So I'm going to combine an independent with a dependent to form one complex sentence. Let's look at our first simple sentence example. So one complete thought. Shauna has a big collection of video games. Has is my verb, who or what has. Shauna is my subject. And I have one complete thought with a subject and a verb of the sentence. Then my next simple sentence example is Shauna plays the same games over and over. Plays is my verb, who or what plays. Shauna plays. Now I'm going to take these two simple sentences, and remember, a simple sentence has one independent clause. So I'm going to take these two independent clauses, I'm going to turn one into a dependent clause to make this more complex. So let's look at our example. So I'm actually going to change our first simple sentence into a dependent clause. So I'm going to use one of my subordinating words here. Even though Shauna has a big collection of video games, so again I turned that first simple sentence, Shauna has a big collection of video games, into a dependent clause by adding the subordinating conjunction even though before it, which makes this a dependent clause. Even though Shauna has a big collection of video games, she plays the same games over and over. So she plays the same games over and over is our independent clause. Subject is she. Plays is our verb of the sentence. One complete thought. She plays the same ones over and over. That means that that particular part of the sentence is independent. And I combine my dependent clause that has no subject and verb of the sentence in it, even though Shauna has a big collection of video games. That's my independent clause. I've put that before my dependent clause. I've put that in front of my independent clause. She plays the same ones over and over. And now I have formed or created a complex sentence. Let's look at another example. So again, I have two simple sentences. I'm going to turn one into a dependent clause, keep the other one independent, and then I'm going to form a more complex sentence in that case. The first simple sentence is the winner of the 5K race was Tony. Was is my verb, who or what was. Winner was. So I have my subject of the sentence, winner. I have my verb of the sentence was. I have one complete thought, the winner of the 5K race was Tony. So I have an independent clause. My second simple sentence, Tony is my roommate. Is my verb, Tony is my subject. I have the subject of the sentence, Tony. The verb of the sentence is, one complete thought. Tony is my roommate. So again, I have two independent clauses here. So I have two simple sentences here that I want to combine into a complex sentence. So the winner of the 5K was Tony. That's my independent clause. I kept my simple sentence, the first one, the same. Winner is my subject of the sentence. Was is my verb. Now I need to turn my second simple sentence, Tony is my roommate, into a dependent clause by either having a relative pronoun in front of it or one of my subordinating conjunctions. So the winner of the 5K was Tony, who, which is my relative pronoun. So now I know I have the introduction of a dependent clause. Who is my roommate? Okay, so who is my roommate is my dependent clause. The winner of the 5K was Tony, which is my independent clause. Combining both clauses together forms a complex sentence. Now I know complex sentences and compound sentences can be quite confusing for you in some cases. But remember, the whole basis of a sentence is it being a simple sentence, having an independent clause. And remember, an independent clause, you have to have a subject, a verb, and you must express a complete thought. A dependent clause, which is also known as a fragment, is missing something. It's dependent upon something else to make it complete. It's either not going to have a subject, it's not going to have a verb, and it will not express a complete thought. Okay? So try to familiarize yourself with those two different types of clauses so that you know not to have a dependent clause stand alone, because it cannot make sense. It's not going to be a complete sentence.